and therefore I'm delighted to let you know I will be living in this same room for another year. It is Day 9 Daily number 471. I really want to be like 1, but of course I can't be a jerk to you, delightful, dear, glorious, lovely viewer, because I'm so happy to see you. Tragically enough, this is the last week of dailies in the month of June. I'm going on a break. I don't know how to take a vacation because all I actually do is work. I know. It's going to be a challenge, but that's okay because I'm going to make myself do it, and by make myself do it, I mean that the people I worked with made me due to health problems. That's right. Overwork is not good for you. Make sure you spend excessive amounts of time playing. Otherwise, people will be angry with you for not being alive. Let's go ahead and talk about today's Terran vs. Zerg topic, and then I want to talk about awesome things. Today's Terran vs. Zerg topic is quite simple. We're going to look at an epic game between Bomber and its Gosu's Ostojiy from the Red Bull Battlegrounds tournament. It is a 50-minute long Terran vs. Zerg that uses literally every unit in the game except the Hydralisk. Nydus Worm, we have planetary fortresses killing hatcheries, everything, the whole shebang. It's a really, 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 it's a really, really, really cool game all around. So I figured it would demand some reasonable amount of analysis because Terran vs. Zerg has been looking a little bit stale, and this opens it up and shows a whole slew of new possibilities, which I'm just excited to elucidate about today. And that's basically it. It's just a good game, and we're going to just analyze it cold. You might be saying, but Sean, why do a game you already casted from the Red Bull Battlegrounds? Every day around 3 p.m., 2 p.m., this is when I need to start at the absolute latest to prepare a show. I'll generally watch around 50 replays, pick 3 that have a common theme, and try to construct a show around those and watch those 3 replays multiple times, take notes, and try to actually have a topic for the day. For any of you who thought that I was somehow skillful enough to just show up and talk about StarCraft, I am not any talented individual. I just put in the work for hours every single day to study this game. Except today, my brain wouldn't function properly. I was just really tired because I got up early this morning and I said, you know what? I'll do a game I already kind of know. Hey, even day 9 would like a day with a little bit less work. So cool, we're doing that today. It relates back to the fact that this morning I was not doing my usual early morning meetings. I was at E3, the Electronic Entertainment Expo, to do a little bit of introductory work for Shoot Mania. Which was a fun, brief little bout this morning, but of course, because I live in downtown Los Angeles, parking is stupidly, ridiculously impossible. All the places that I normally park at in downtown are like $5 flat rate, or monthly parking. It's super great, right? It's really, really, really easy. I do a lot of my shopping and like I get my hair cut in downtown at Salon 11, and it's $5. This weekend at E3, it's $60 for flat rate parking. $60! What the hell? Like, that is the most ridiculous amount of money for parking of all time. Like, I end up finding $20 parking. I walk there, but I have to arrive at around 8:30 to get there. And let me tell you something. Can I tell you a secret? I don't get up at 7 normally. This is not my identity as a person. I have never gotten up at 7 and been like, this feels great. I can't wait to get up at 7 tomorrow. I'm very excited to blow off tomorrow and sleep until 2. So I ended up getting up valiantly to do the little Shoot Mania cast. And one thing that I think is really interesting is, one thing I find really interesting about Shoot Mania is that it does a really interesting balance between spectating and the esports end, because with esports, those are actually 2 different things. Let's take Counter-Strike, for example. It's a 5-on-5 first-person shooter game. How do you observe that properly? Well, when I used to watch a lot of CS, I mean, there were 5 first-person point of views for one team and 5 for the other, and you kind of wanted a top-down view. You needed about at least 3 monitors to be able to successfully follow all the action. It made it very difficult from a spectating point of view. Incredibly fun to play, loved playing it, but it was difficult to be a passive observer, to sit back and just watch and understand everything that was going on. And this is something I find quite cool about Shoot Mania. It's a 3 versus 3, but in every round, one team is offense, one is defense. And the defense, all players are playing. They all have rockets, like you shoot and then there's a distance and it explodes. And they're trying to just defend a beacon. The offense does have 3 players, but only one gets selected. And that one offensive player has a rail gun. So every shot he makes that connects with a player is an insta-kill. Each has an insta-kill gun with a long reload time. So it's a 1-on-3, with the railgun player having a huge advantage since he can one-shot kill and it's insta-hit. And the camera, spectator-wise, just plants itself on the railgun player. Isn't that an elegant, clean, simple way to make the spectating straightforward? You're always watching from the player who is the offender with the railgun. And sure, there is this playing end with 3 different defenders, all with their coordination and their rockets, but I think that's sort of like a little difference between them. And that's something that I found quite neat. Haha. Other than that, I don't actually know that much about Shoot Mania. I should play it more. Today's also exciting because I have 3 cups. We have water, we have coffee, and we have coffee because I forgot that I already had a cup of coffee. So we're just going to be alternating. Delightful. Is there anything else to announce? Oh! Holy shit, I almost killed myself. I had a revelation and leaned back. Oh my god, the amount of adrenaline in my system. Oh my god, the amount of adrenaline in my system. You do not know how close I almost killed myself right there. Oh my god, the floor is not nearly as soft as I would like it to be in an event like that. Okay. That's such a stupid thing. I remembered the Fun Day Monday topic for the month when I am away. It's like, guys, Fun Day Monday. And he died doing what he loved. Let me tell you the Fun Day Monday topic. So, there is going to be no Fun Day Monday on June 11th. There is going to be no Fun Day Monday for the rest of June. The daily will resume in July. And the rest of June, I would like you to attempt the following topic. A gentleman by the name of Jay gave me this topic today. Shout out to you, Jay. Thank you for this. Play as Zerg. You must use Neural Parasite to mind control one of his probes long enough to build the other race. And then you must kill your opponent with that other race. Is that not great? Isn't that easy? It's actually impossible. It's really, really, really ridiculously difficult, but I'm excited to see people's attempt at doing it. And of course, you can use some Zerg in there, you know, for defense and stuff, but I want you to kill him with the other race. Let's hop into the game. I give you a full month to do that. Please, submit to Monday at day9.tv. So in this game, I'm going to start off somewhat quickly with the sound on. In this game, I want to note, honestly, one of the main motivations of me doing this daily, obviously the fact that I was exhausted from doing E3 this morning and was just like, fuck it, punt, do a daily you've seen, or do a game you've seen before. But also to give a little extra shout out to Ostojiy, who's a player I like quite a bit, who I think doesn't give the number of, the amount of recognition that I think he deserves. He's a really slick player, and I really like him quite a bit. He's also unbelievably darling. I honestly can think of no better word to describe Ostojiy than darling. He is a darling human being. He's up against Bomber, who is no slouch at all, having won some GSL titles, having won some MLG titles. He's just a good player. As you might or might not know. Yeah. So you're noticing I'm not actually doing an extraordinary amount of commentary. That's because this game is like an hour long. So we're going to be speeding right along. The important aspects I want to note is the map Metropolis is really big. Most notably, Look at the third expansion. The third expansion is always the most telling aspect of any map, tucked away in the corner as far from the opponent as possible, with two sides, this top side and this right side, are boundaries of the map. So there is essentially two angles. One is here from the left, and two is here from below, and you almost always have that covered due to the fact that you have a natural expansion. In other words, there's exactly one boundary that someone can approach the third expansion from. Literally, all strategy in StarCraft 2 comes from how you take the third expansion and how that third expansion looks on the map. Literally, all of core StarCraft strategy comes from that. Think about things in terms of 3 bases. All the matchups become exciting and enticing and delighting and igniting and perspiring. Cool. So, I don't want to spend too much time in the early game, because what these two players do, I just think is delightful. We're going to do some analysis of the early game in its ×2 phase in part 1. But for the most part, it's going to be pretty standard of standards. We're going to see Bomber go for the barracks expand and then 2 barracks. This is actually a highly defensive play as Terran. Generally, Terrans open with some sort of double gas, and then they'll follow this up by getting a factory so that they can get the Hellions up. Sometimes you'll see players like Marine King Prime open up with 4 barracks instead of 3. But 3 just is not enough to put pressure on a Zerg, especially not on a map with the distances as huge as this one. Look at me trying to scroll the distances from base to base. That's quite big. 3 is very defensive. And I say very defensive because they ain't fast like Hellions. They can't put that pressure on. Cool. I just want to note that I think very clearly, if you just look at the top half of the map, we have main, natural, third, and it's pretty clear that we're going to end up seeing this 4th and 5th for the Zerg. And likewise, if you follow my mouse cursor down to the Terrans, Terran's going to have a 3rd base here, and then a 4th and a 5th, as expected. The expansions of contention are these expansions on the side, one here, another expansion here, and of course the island maps that kind of have these creep tumors here. So that way Zerg can expand them a little bit more easily than the other races. Ostojiy, we're going to see do kind of the Zerg mix du jour. Considering that Zergy buddies are getting really excited about their brand new range 5 queens, we follow it up with 2 queens, get 2 gases at 35. Not the 4 gas at 40, as is common with Spanishiwa's Ice Fisher strategy that so many players talk about, but we do get our early hatchery before anything. Dongre actually generally gets his 3rd hatchery before he takes any gas at all, relying solely on queens, and that was before the range 5 patch. So Dongre is fucking crazy, and he likes larva. So we're going to go ahead and just note that this is good. In math, we call this proof by Dongre. Ah, wonderful, wonderful. I see all caps rage in the chat. Talking, I get 7 gas, 2 hatched like a boss. Indeed, boss mode is what Ostojiy is going to be all about. This play is quite reasonable from Ostojiy to spread the creep with the 2 queens as early as possible, given that the map is as large as mainland China. So we may as well start that early. Remember how I said, hey, this is a very, very defensive mixture? Well, you know what? We're getting bunker and a 3rd command center. I love it. Now, as a general rule, this is a super important rule if you're a scrub. Super important rule if you're a scrub. Also ultra important if you're a master or grandmaster player who just can't quite seem to get that extra edge. The most basic issues that people have with strategy, like broad, high-level, top-of-the-range strategy, is just consistency. If you're going to go defensive, then get a defensive mix of units, a defensive mix of production structures, and do things that benefit from defense. Have I said something obvious? I mean, I think I have, but you know what people do? Fuck this up. I'm getting all this energy from the previous near-death experience, leaning back like this when my chair almost tipped over, but still, people tend to mess this up. Okay, cool. Here's an example. Let me back up for a bit. Right here. So, okay, cool. We go 3 barracks. I said this was defensive. Whether that makes sense to you or not, let's ignore. Let's all just assume for the moment that 3 barracks in this matchup is defensive. Let's begin with that. What would benefit from defense? Getting a 3rd command center. Oh, well, that makes a lot of sense, right? If we are setting up defensively, what benefits from defense? A command center. You know what a ton of people do right now? Double gas and go for factory. No! Or hell, they even stay with this 2 amount of gas and go for factory. We're going to see Bomber commit cleanly to one idea. Defense early on. Excellent. Double engineering bay. Fantastissimo. Just going nice and defensive. See that consistency? Defensive production structure, defensive building follow-up. Command center, 2 engineering bays. Wonderful. Wonderful, this is so cool. And we see Bomber then taking his gas geysers and proceeding as normal. Hey, alright, getting on some extra barracks, cool. I like this quite a bit. Starting to rebuild a Marine army as early as possible. Because he's going defensive. He's not going medevacs early to do an attack. Sure, factories are great for teching and all that good jazz. I'm going to go over to Ostoji's half. Ostojiy is doing also a very common opening. Once you get this 3 hatch, based upon general judgment, you want to get this 3rd base / 4th hatch as much as possible. You want to get your 1/1-ups because you like Ling Infestor mixes. Ling Infestor is becoming the Zerg mix du jour. Mutas are being phased out because they're quite difficult to use properly. And this Baneling nest is essentially a safety mechanism. Many attacks that Terrans will do, like a Combat Shield Marine Blue Flame Hellion push, they come before Infestors pop up, and just speed Lings are not enough to defend it, so we get the Banelings to be a little bit of a bolster to that. And of course the creep is good too. So there's some cool decisions that are going to happen before we hop into the break. Bomber gets a back-placed bunker. This is to be able to both cover these minerals and the ramp somewhat. In case there's an early bust, we have our Marines knocking stuff down. And meanwhile, back in the home, we just are making a ton of Marines. Notice something interesting. This is very unusual to see in a game of StarCraft. The factory is built at a time such that if we immediately add on an armory, we will be just in time to get level 2 upgrades. So I'm just going to note, when we come back to 8 minutes, or excuse me, it looks like I came back to 6 minutes. Oh god, how embarrassing. I'm going to have to times 8 this. For any of you who just want to know general timings, okay, cool. And bam! Very easy timing to do. You're going to start an upgrade. How long does a factory take? 60 seconds. How long does an armory take? 65 seconds. Cool. How long does infantry weapons take? 160 seconds. So basically, when your engineering bay is done, build like a Marine and a half and then start the factory. Easy peasy. One thing that I will note, just as a general rule in StarCraft, obviously there are exceptions to what I'm saying, but here is a good general clue for any of you who have been going for double upgrades. If you are going for 2 upgrading buildings at once, you are not trying to hit an attack timing when 1-1 finishes. You are trying to hit an attack timing when 2-2 finishes. Almost always, like literally 95% of circumstances that pop into my mind. If you go for 1-1 really fast, we can clearly see in this game from Bomber what the effect ends up being. We don't have combat shield, we're starting barracks, and in fact, as we're getting close to 1-1 being done, we just don't really have medevacs, we don't have marines, we don't have any of the useful stuff that we would want. We're going to have like 30 marines when 1-1 is done, and we won't have combat shield. Any double upgrader is almost always going for 2-2. It looks like we've been doing segment 1 for 21 minutes, so let me just see if there's anything noteworthy going on at this 10-minute mark in the game. Ostojiy is playing fairly passively. I think I'll just go... Whoops. I think I'll just go for a slight bit longer, as Bomber is going for his third. I believe Ostojiy does a nice spot here. Sees that a third is coming quite early. 11 minutes is very early for a third to be done. So he quite naturally responds with the insta-fourth. Soon enough, he'll be getting the insta-fifth. This is largely helped by the broad map distances, but truly any time you're going for this infester with pathogen glands 1-1 mixture and into fast 2-2, you are going as late-term focused as possible. You're going to be using these infestors for defense. I really like the fact that... we're going to see Ostojiy go for a very fast hive. This is purely due to the fact that he has seen his opponent go for the fast third. Cool. Right now in part number 1, what we have seen is a pretty clear setup of the opening stage of the game. Nothing fancy from either player. Everything's quite clear, to be honest, really. We may have learned a couple of new things, but to any veteran of either race, this is somewhat straightforward. The only thing that's somewhat unusual is Bomber's opening, largely marine-focused and defensive. Ostojiy is quite expansion-focused, and the big lesson that we may have learned today is make sure your build is consistent. If you are doing defensive primary actions, make sure that your secondary actions also are defensively minded. If we're building these defensive marine-based openings, then let's benefit from that defense by getting expansions, upgrades, etc. I want to go on to part number 2 so that way we can see some of the crazy transitions both players are going to do, namely Nydus Worm and Raven.